This man should be beaten to death in a crowded market because he is not a human but an animal. He is a serial killer who kills people just for fun. Every night this beast lies in wait on deserted roads and mercilessly kills anyone passing by. Even when he was put in the dock in court, he considered the law no better than garbage. But in this world, everything has an end. This time, this killer mistakenly picked a fight with a person who is the very synonym of death himself. He is none other than Dong Lee. In the Korean underworld, just hearing his name makes big gangs tremble. Now the question is, when the serial killer collides with death himself, what heavy price will he have to pay? Let's watch the full film with movies recap. Believe me, the film is fantastic and super entertaining. The story begins with a young man with a cold and ruthless face who is driving a car. This is the very serial killer we have been talking about. Actually, he is chasing his prey on a deserted road. He intentionally rams the car in front from behind. His motive is clear, to start a fight and force the prey out of the car. The old man in front starts cursing him angrily, not knowing his life is about to end right here. And that's when the killer plays his bloody move. The murderer kills that old man with extreme brutality. He continuously stabs him with a knife, leaving him in such a bad state that the person cannot survive. According to information, this was the 20th murder committed by that serial killer. The next day, the Korean police arrive at the crime scene. Seeing the condition of the corpse, all the policemen are shocked and troubled because all recent murders were done in the same way. Every time, the killer rams the victim's car from behind. Then, seizing the opportunity, he mercilessly kills. Inspector Kim is completely exhausted by these cases. For several months, the Korean police haven't been able to reach any solid conclusion, while the serial killer is still roaming free, out of the law's reach. After investigation, Kim tells his seniors that this is clearly a serial killer murdering without any reason, but his senior officers dismiss his statement. They say there is no serial killer in Korea. You guys are just imagining things. Instead, they scold the police team, calling them failures and useless, and Kim is removed from investigating this case. Meanwhile, in a completely different situation, our Dong Lee has now fully become an underworld boss. Dong Lee's daily routine includes one special thing. He practices boxing every morning, but the punching bag on which he showers his punches doesn't have sand inside. It has a member of his gang inside. Whoever betrays him has to pay a very heavy price. In today's time, Dong Lee's status is among the biggest leaders in the underworld. Alone, he controls many areas and big businesses. One day, a meeting takes place regarding the division of territories, but the leader of the other gang takes Dong Lee lightly. When one of Dong Lee's men speaks on his behalf, that rude leader throws water on his face and insults Dong Lee by saying he doesn't know how to control his men. Then Dong Lee himself steps forward. He punches his own man to teach him when to speak and when not to. But he doesn't let the other gang's guy go either and knocks his tooth out. Everyone understands how costly it can be to mess with Dong Lee. He puts the man's tooth in a glass. Out of fear, the opposing gang's leader silently picks up the glass and drinks it. After this, the territory agreement is completed very peacefully. That night, Dong Lee decides to return home alone. He drives without any bodyguards. But on a deserted road, suddenly another car rams his car from behind with great force. Actually, that serial killer was looking for prey, and this time, his next target was Dong Lee himself. After the collision, when he thinks the car isn't too damaged, Dong Lee calmly steps out. Dong Lee was about to forgive him. But as soon as he turned his face the other way, suddenly the serial killer took out a knife and stabbed Dong Lee multiple times. But Dong Lee was very strong. Therefore, he turned the situation around in time. A fierce scuffle begins between the two. Dong Lee continuously attacks powerfully and finally delivers a deep wound to the serial killer's chest. Seeing the situation worsen, the serial killer quickly sits in his car, rams Dong Lee hard, and escapes from the spot. It seems like everything is over now. But in time, Dong Lee is taken to the hospital and his life is saved. Meanwhile, Dong Lee's men think all this is the conspiracy of the previous gang leader. In anger, they go to his area and cause destruction. Truly, such brothers are completely loyal. Meanwhile, the serial killer's condition becomes quite bad. From Dong Lee's attack, he has a serious injury in his chest. Enduring the pain, he tries to manage his wounds himself. At that very time, an old man mistakenly passes by there, and he too becomes the victim of that killer. The next day, Dong Lee's condition improves a lot. He tells one of his men that yesterday's attack was not ordered by that old gang leader, because the person he encountered, his fighting style wasn't like that of a regular thug. Dong Li remembered that man's car number. He immediately writes the number and sends his men for investigation. When police officer Kim gets the news that an underworld don was attacked with a knife, he is quite surprised. He goes directly to meet Dong Li to get information and a statement about the incident. But Dong Li refuses to give any clue. He believes the Korean police are only in name, not in work. This makes Kim even more angry, and he decides to start investigating himself. When he sees Dong Li's car, he finds the rear part of the car badly broken. From here, he becomes completely sure that all this is the work of some serial killer. On the other hand, being an underworld don, getting attacked by a street thug has already damaged Dong Li's honor considerably. Not only that, the previous gang leader himself comes to Dong Li to complain. He says, "Your men have caused destruction in my area under a misunderstanding. You will have to pay compensation for it." He mocks Dong Li, saying, "If I were such a big don and this happened to me, I would commit suicide out of shame." Hearing this, Dong Li is boiling inside. But to prevent the situation from worsening, he silently bears everything. Meanwhile, Kim asks his senior officer for permission to take Dong Li into custody and interrogate him. He believes this is the only way to reach the serial killer quickly. But his senior outright rejects this proposal because, in reality, he is secretly involved in wrong businesses with Dong Li. Now Kim is left alone, and on the other hand, the serial killer is still roaming openly. Now the serial killer is out hunting again at night. This time, on a deserted road, his victim is a truck driver uncle who is waiting for the goods to be loaded, and thus another innocent person is killed without reason. When the killer climbs into the truck, he finds a birthday cake already kept there. Actually, that unfortunate driver was going home to celebrate his daughter's birthday. But fate had something else in store. The serial killer opens the cake and starts eating it with extreme cruelty. During this, another man is present inside the truck. The killer looks at him, and a terrifying smile appears on his face. Now what must have been that man's fate? Everyone can understand that. The killer kills him too, and while running away, his knife accidentally falls on the roadside. The next day, Dong Li gets a female artist to draw the serial killer's face. Indeed, her art is amazing. Taking the picture in hand, Dong Li sends his men everywhere to search. But on the other hand, the rumor has already spread that someone attacked Dong Li. Because of this, his honor and status are continuously falling. Many business partners back out from investing with him. If this continues, Dong Li's empire won't last long. His men find the same knife on the roadside that the serial killer dropped after the incident. Seeing that knife, Dong Li's anger flares up even more. And then, the very next day, Dong Li and police officer Kim reach an agreement. Both decide to catch that serial killer at any cost. Dong Li agrees to give all the solid evidence to the police. Now on one side is the law, and on the other is the power of the underworld, and in between is a beast. But there is also one condition: whoever catches the serial killer first will have the full right to punish him. As soon as he gets the killer's sketch, Kim sends all his colleagues to different areas for investigation. But before the serial killer is caught, Dong Li hatches an even more dangerous plot. He gives his men the same serial killer's knife and gets the previous gang leader killed with it. His motive is clear: to eliminate his business enemy on one hand, and to put all the blame on the serial killer on the other. The next day, the police reach the spot. The death of a big underworld don shakes the entire police department. News runs that the gang leader was murdered with the serial killer's knife. At the same time, the serial killer, sitting in a dhaba, sees himself being framed on TV. He starts boiling with anger inside. That very night, Dong Li arrives at that gang leader's funeral in a mocking manner. From a corner, the serial killer watches Dong Li with hate-filled eyes. But his motive there is not to kill Dong Li. He silently gives a letter to the dead Don's men, which says, "Your boss was killed by Dong Li using my knife." After the funeral, the serial killer goes out hunting again at night and continuously kills people in a cruel manner. Meanwhile, Dong Li and police Kim are searching for evidence. But then a big ruckus erupts. The dead gang leader's men pounce on Dong Li to take revenge. They want to kill him at any cost. But Dong Li is not an ordinary man. He alone easily handles 10 to 12 thugs. Whoever is unfortunate enough to come in front of his fist falls straight to the ground. In just a little while, all the men of the dead gang leader are completely wiped out by Dong Li. Meanwhile, police officer Kim is scuffling with another rogue. But the situation turns such that he accidentally kills that rogue. If this gets out, it's straight to jail and life behind bars. But this time, Dong Li helps Kim, and the corpse is quietly buried. The next day, seeing the injury marks on Kim's face, his senior gets worried, Still, without delay, he sends Kim to investigate a kidnapping case. One case wasn't even finished when another trouble fell on his head. Continuous pressure and exhaustion have troubled Kim a lot. During the investigation, he sees a suspicious person standing at the entrance of a deserted alley, and at that moment, he becomes sure. This is the real mastermind. He is none other than that very serial killer. Kim immediately chases after him with his two colleagues, but after running some distance, they lose sight of him. This failure demotivates Kim greatly. He feels he is useless. When he returns to the police station, a woman constable gives him an important clue in his hand. She tells him that fingerprints have been recovered from the murder site, and based on those fingerprints, Kim has now come even closer to reaching the serial killer. Finally, Kim reaches that man's location, but seeing the scene there, he himself is shocked. That place was no less than a broken-down slum. Kim searches the house, and then his eyes fall on a picture of a family. He immediately takes out the clue that Dong Li had sent earlier and matches it with the man in that picture. The result is a 100% match. Now there is no doubt left. Kim immediately sends a voice recording to Dong Li, saying the serial killer has been found. Hearing the recording, Dong Li says with firm belief, "Yes, this is the very shit." From here, the film rapidly moves towards its climax. That very night, Dong Li gathers all his men again. Every man has a picture of the serial killer. The order is clear: find and catch alive. And whoever completes this mission successfully will get a reward from Dong Li. Now the question was, now that the identity of that devil is out in the open, what will be his end? Dong Li's men spread to every nook and corner of the city. More than 60,000 rented rooms, thousands of suspicious places, the entire neighborhood, everything is searched. But surprisingly, even after so much search, the serial killer is nowhere to be found. But as they say, everything has its time, and his time was now slowly approaching. The next day, Dong Li is waiting for his car on the roadside. Then his eyes fall on a college girl who is getting drenched in heavy rain. Dong Li doesn't think for a second and silently gives his umbrella to that girl. From the outside, he may look scary, but inside, his heart is quite soft. At the same time, Kim arrives there and tells the girl to stay away from this man. He is an underworld don. The girl looks at Dong Li and says, laughing, "He looks more like a bodyguard than a don." Hearing this, Dong Li himself can't help but laugh. A little later, that girl thanks Dong Li, gets on a bus, and goes home. That very night, Dong Li and all the brothers eat and drink heartily. So much fun is had that Kim and his two colleagues even forget that they are police officers. But this atmosphere of happiness doesn't last long. Suddenly, breaking news runs on TV. Another murder has happened today, and the victim is none other than that very college girl to whom Dong Li gave the umbrella in the afternoon. The reporter says more than 10 knife stabs were made in that girl's stomach. Hearing this, Dong Li and Kim's blood boils. Dong Li immediately orders all his men to find that bastard today itself because he just committed murder. He wouldn't have gone far. But the city's streets were filled with people. Finding him in such a crowd was almost impossible. After this, Dong Li and his men lie in wait on a deserted road. But the serial killer already realizes he is being tracked. He presses the accelerator fully and speeds away. Dong Li and Kim immediately chase after him. This chase is so dangerous that in just a little while, 3 cars collide with great force. Everyone's heads spin. But amidst that chaos, the serial killer escapes again. Dong Li and Kim chase after him, risking their lives because giving him another chance now was very dangerous. Then suddenly, the serial killer ambushes and attacks one of Dong Li's men. That man is killed on the spot. When Dong Li reaches there, it is already too late. The dying man, with his last strength, raises a finger and points in the direction the serial killer ran. Now there is no way left. Dong Li grits his teeth and runs after that beast alone, because now this wasn't just about revenge. It had become a question of justice. Following the blood trail of that serial killer, Dong Li reaches straight into a beer bar. He checks every room. Inside, people are laughing, immersed in enjoyment. But something feels wrong. Dong Li looks carefully again and finds, in a corner, 2 girls crying out of fear. And inside, the serial killer is standing holding another girl hostage. He also gets the feeling that today he is going to get beaten. The very next moment, Dong Li breaks the door, enters inside, and directly rains punches on that killer. Not a single blow misses. Without any mercy, he throws him to the ground. The killer becomes unconscious right there. In anger, Dong Li drags him all the way to his den. Even after spitting blood, that beast tries to laugh. Seeing this, Dong Li flares up even more. He thinks such beasts don't deserve to live. But just when he is about to finish him, police officer Kim arrives there. He pushes Dong Li back and arrests the serial killer. In just a little while, the news spreads. The serial killer is caught. The entire country is shaken. The media also reaches the hospital. The killer looks completely calm. No fear, no remorse. He denies all charges. The police don't have solid evidence. Based on just one knife, it was impossible to convict him. Kim becomes helpless. He too feels, I wish Dong Li had finished him right there. In court, the serial killer sits carefree. No witnesses, no evidence. The law can do nothing. He laughs even in court. But then suddenly, Dong Li arrives in court. He places all the evidence and the whole story before the judge. He tells that during the fight, he stabbed the killer in the chest. The police investigate, and everything turns out true. Besides, he also shows a letter that the serial killer had sent earlier. The handwriting matches completely. Now the killer has no way to escape. Finally, the court sentences him to death. There, Dong Li also agrees to go to jail for breaking the law. When he reaches jail, all the prisoners look at him with respect, and the serial killer turns pale seeing him because Kim had intentionally kept them in the same cell so that Dong Li could get justice for that innocent girl. Now what will Dong Li do with him? This we already know. If you like this movie, how many out of 5 stars would you give it? Please do tell in the comments. If possible, do hype the video, and after liking the video, also be sure to subscribe to the channel.